Have you ever noticed what happens when two people who once talked every day suddenly stop contacting each other? No messages, no calls, no simple, "How are you?" Just silence. At first, it feels small, almost normal. Maybe both people are busy. Maybe life is simply moving forward. But then something strange begins to happen inside the mind. The quiet space between two people starts to grow, and the human mind does not like empty space. It tries to fill it. You begin to think. You remember things you did not think about before. Small moments, small conversations, the way they laughed, the way they said your name, the way your day felt different when you knew you would hear from them. This is where silence becomes powerful. Because when contact stops, communication does not actually stop. It just moves to a different place. It moves inside the mind. And the mind is loud. The human brain is designed to search for meaning. It wants answers. It wants clarity. When something suddenly disappears from your daily life, the brain begins asking questions automatically. Why did they stop talking? Do they still think about me? Did I do something wrong? Did I matter to them? These questions repeat again and again, not because someone is weak, not because someone is desperate, but because this is how human psychology works. The brain tries to solve emotional puzzles, and silence is one of the biggest puzzles of all. You see, when two people talk every day, everything feels stable, predictable, comfortable. The mind relaxes because it knows what to expect. But when communication suddenly disappears, the mind becomes alert. It becomes curious. Silence creates attention. The strange thing is this. Many people only begin to realize the value of a connection when the noise disappears. When messages stop, memories start. You remember the conversations that once felt ordinary. You remember the moments you did not pay much attention to at the time. Suddenly, those small moments begin to feel important. This is not an accident. It is how the human mind protects emotional connections. When something meaningful is no longer present, the brain begins to highlight it, like a spotlight turning on in a dark room. And this is why silence between a man and a woman can feel so heavy. It is not just the absence of words, it is the presence of thoughts. Two people may not be contacting each other, but that does not mean they are not thinking about each other. In fact, silence often creates more thinking than conversation ever did. The mind replays memories. One moment leads to another. One memory opens the door to 10 more. A simple laugh, a late-night conversation, a small joke that only the two of you understood. Suddenly, those moments return without invitation. And here is the deeper truth many people do not talk about. Silence forces people to face their emotions. When communication exists every day, people sometimes hide their real feelings behind routine. Messages become normal, calls become expected. The connection becomes part of daily life. But when that routine disappears, emotions lose their hiding place. Now the mind has space to feel. This is why silence can feel uncomfortable. It removes distractions. It removes the noise that once kept emotions quiet. And when the noise disappears, the heart begins to speak. Some people try to ignore it. They stay busy, they distract themselves, they scroll through their phones, they focus on work, friends, anything that keeps their mind occupied. But silence has a strange way of returning. Late at night, during quiet moments, when the world slows down, that is when thoughts return the strongest. And suddenly the mind begins asking a deeper question. What did that person really mean to me? This question is powerful because it forces honesty. When two people stop contacting each other, they are no longer reacting to each other's daily presence. Instead, they are reacting to their own feelings, and feelings are difficult to hide from yourself. Some people discover that the connection was not as deep as they believed. Time passes, and the silence slowly fades into distance. But for others, the silence does something different. It grows louder, because the more time passes, the more the mind becomes curious. The brain keeps returning to the same emotional door, knocking again and again, and every time it knocks, the memories become clearer. This is why silence between two people is never truly empty. It is full of thoughts, full of reflection, full of emotions that finally have space to breathe. Two people may not be sending messages, but their minds may be having the longest conversation they have ever had. And this silent conversation can change how someone sees the entire connection. Because sometimes distance reveals things that daily communication hides. Sometimes silence shows people what they could not see when everything was normal. But here's the question that makes this situation even more powerful. What is actually happening inside the other person's mind during this silence? Are they feeling the same curiosity, the same memories, the same quiet questions? Human psychology reveals something surprising about this moment of distance, something most people never expect. And understanding this can completely change how you see silence between two people. So stay with this until the end, because what happens next inside the human mind during this silence can reveal truths about connection, attraction, and emotions that very few people truly understand. Silence does something unusual to the human mind. When someone who once had a place in your daily life is suddenly no longer there, the brain begins to react in ways most people never expect. It becomes more attentive. It starts noticing emotional value that once felt ordinary. This is one of the quiet laws of human psychology. People rarely understand the importance of something when it is always present. Familiarity makes things feel normal, predictable, safe. But when that presence disappears, the brain changes its focus. Attention shifts toward what is missing. This shift is not weakness. It is a natural response built deep inside human behavior. The mind begins reviewing experiences, not in a dramatic way, but slowly, thought by thought, memory by memory. A moment from the past suddenly appears in the present. Then another follows, and another. Soon the mind starts connecting pieces that once seemed unrelated. A small gesture, a certain look, a conversation that ended too quickly. At the time, these details may have felt insignificant, but distance gives them a new meaning. The brain becomes more aware of emotional patterns that were once hidden behind daily interaction. This is the psychology of absence. When something meaningful is no longer available, the mind begins to evaluate it more deeply. The emotional system becomes active. Curiosity grows stronger. Not because someone wants to suffer, but because the brain is searching for understanding. And during this process, something interesting happens. Positive memories often rise to the surface first. The mind tends to revisit moments that carried warmth, connection, or comfort. It naturally focuses on experiences that felt good, the laughter, the peaceful conversations, the feeling of being understood. This is how emotional memory works. When people look back from a distance, the brain often highlights the parts that carried meaning. It is almost like the mind is trying to preserve the emotional value of the connection. But there is another layer happening at the same time. The absence creates space for reflection. While communication was active, many thoughts remained unnoticed. The routine of daily interaction kept everything moving quickly. There was little time to step back and examine the connection from a distance. Now that distance exists, and distance changes perspective. It allows a person to look at the relationship in a calmer way. Without the constant exchange of words, emotions begin to settle into a clearer form. Thoughts become slower, more deliberate. People begin asking themselves questions they never asked before. What did that connection truly mean in my life? Was it just routine or something deeper? Did I appreciate it while it was present? These questions are powerful because they push the mind toward honesty. Without the distraction of constant contact, individuals are left alone with their own emotional truth. This process does not happen only on one side. When two people stop reaching out to each other, both minds enter this quiet phase of evaluation. Each person moves through their own private reflections, sometimes slowly, sometimes unexpectedly. A man might appear composed on the outside, continuing his responsibilities, moving through daily life as usual. But internally, thoughts may begin to return during quiet moments. A woman might keep her routine steady, maintaining strength and independence, yet certain memories may surface when the world becomes calm around her. This is the silent psychological effect of distance. It activates awareness. Not every connection triggers this response. Some interactions fade naturally when communication ends. The mind accepts the separation and moves forward without much emotional resistance. But when the connection carried genuine meaning, the brain responds differently. It keeps returning to the same emotional space, again and again. The person begins to recognize subtle feelings that were not fully understood before. Sometimes affection becomes clearer, sometimes appreciation grows stronger, and sometimes people realize they overlooked something that mattered more than they realized. This realization does not come all at once. It unfolds slowly. The human mind processes emotions in layers. At first, there is confusion, then curiosity, then reflection. Over time, understanding begins to take shape. And during this process, silence becomes a mirror. It reflects the true emotional weight of the connection. Without daily conversation, people cannot rely on routine to guide their feelings. Instead, they must listen to what their inner world is telling them. Some discover that the bond was temporary, a passing moment in their journey. And when that realization settles, the mind gently releases the attachment. But others experience something very different. The more time passes, the clearer the emotional value becomes. They begin to see the connection in a new light, not through the rush of constant interaction, but through calm reflection, through quiet recognition of what the other person added to their life. This awareness can be surprising. Sometimes people only understand their true feelings when the connection is no longer directly in front of them. The absence removes distraction and forces emotional clarity, and this clarity can transform how someone views the entire relationship. Suddenly, certain memories feel more important than they once did. Certain conversations feel more meaningful. Even simple moments take on a new emotional weight. This is why silence between two people is never just silence. It is a period of psychological discovery, a moment when the mind evaluates, questions, and slowly uncovers emotions that may have remained hidden during the noise of everyday communication. But there is another powerful force that begins to appear during this stage. It is not only reflection, it is conflict. Because while the heart may start recognizing deeper emotions, another part of the mind begins pushing in the opposite direction. A quiet tension forms between feeling and restraint. And this inner tension becomes one of the most challenging psychological experiences two people can face when distance grows between them. This quiet tension begins slowly. At first, it is just a small feeling, a slight pull inside the mind, a thought that appears without warning. One part of the mind says to move forward and forget everything. Another part quietly asks whether the story between those two people is really finished. This is where the real struggle begins. Human beings are not controlled only by emotion. Another powerful force lives inside the mind. It is pride. It is self-protection. It is the instinct that tries to keep a person safe from rejection or disappointment. So while the heart may feel curiosity, the mind often builds resistance. A person may think about reaching out, but then another voice appears inside the head. It says, "Stay quiet." It says, if they wanted to talk, they would have already done it. It says, "Do not make yourself vulnerable." This internal argument can continue for days, sometimes even longer. People walk through their normal routines, they go to work, they speak with friends, they handle responsibilities. From the outside, everything looks calm and controlled, but inside, a quiet conversation continues. One moment, the mind feels confident about staying distant. The next moment, something small triggers a memory again, a familiar place, a song, a phrase someone else says that suddenly reminds them of the past. These unexpected reminders have a strange effect on the mind. They reopen emotional doors that someone thought were already closed. And when that happens, the inner debate becomes stronger. Part of the mind tries to maintain distance. Another part continues asking questions. Did that connection truly end for the right reason? Or did both people simply step back at the same time? The human mind dislikes unfinished emotional experiences. When something meaningful ends without clear understanding, the brain keeps searching for answers. This search is quiet, private, often invisible to everyone around. A man may look strong and focused while moving through his day. Yet during a calm moment, his mind may suddenly return to the same person again. A woman may appear independent and steady, yet a random memory might briefly pause her thoughts and bring the past back into focus. Neither person may speak about it, neither may show it outwardly, but internally, something continues unfolding. The interesting part is that both individuals may be experiencing this same inner tension without knowing it. Each person assumes the other has already moved on. Each person believes the silence means the story is over. Yet at the same time, both minds might still be processing the same emotional puzzle. This is one of the most complex parts of human psychology. Two people can feel similar curiosity while remaining completely unaware of it. Why does this happen? Because self-protection is powerful. No one enjoys feeling exposed. No one enjoys the possibility of reaching out and receiving nothing in return. So people remain still. They wait. They observe the passing days while convincing themselves that staying quiet is the safest option. But the longer the distance continues, the more intense the inner conflict can become. Some days, the mind feels certain that letting go is the correct choice. The person feels calm, even relieved. It seems like the emotional chapter is closing naturally. Then another moment arrives unexpectedly, perhaps during a peaceful evening, perhaps during a long drive, perhaps while sitting alone after a busy day, and suddenly the mind returns to the same thought again. What if the other person is thinking about this too? That single question can shift everything. It brings back curiosity. It reopens emotional reflection. The brain starts imagining possibilities it tried to ignore before. This cycle of certainty and doubt is common whenever two people share a connection that once mattered deeply. The heart may want clarity, the mind wants safety. These two forces rarely move in the same direction. Safety encourages distance. Emotion encourages understanding, and so the quiet struggle continues. Some people eventually silence the emotional voice completely. They decide that protecting their peace is more important than reopening old questions. With time, their focus shifts fully toward the future. Others find that the emotional signal does not disappear so easily. Instead, it grows stronger with reflection. They begin to realize that the connection left a mark that cannot simply be ignored. It becomes clear that something meaningful existed, something that influenced their thoughts, their feelings, and their understanding of relationships. This awareness can change how a person views the entire situation. What once felt like a simple pause in communication begins to look like something more significant. The silence starts revealing hidden emotional weight. And that realization introduces another important truth. Not every connection is meant to last forever, but the ones that truly touch the heart rarely disappear without leaving a lasting impression. Even when two people stop speaking, the emotional imprint can remain inside their memories, shaping how they think about trust, closeness, and understanding. This is why the quiet tension between feeling and restraint can become so powerful. It forces a person to confront what truly matters to them. Eventually, every mind reaches a turning point, a moment where the inner conflict begins to settle. And when that moment arrives, something very revealing begins to happen inside the human heart.